Namaste everyone and welcome once again to the Anna Publishing Monthly Research and Ethics series. I am Dr. Aamarpali Roy and I am delighted to have you join us for episode 2 of this series. In this series, our goal is to discuss important topics related to research integrity, ethical publication practices, and responsible academic scholarship. Today's session is titled How to Avoid Plagiarism Writing with Integrity in Academic Research. Plagiarism is a major issue in academic writing and a common reason manuscripts are rejected. Many researchers, especially early career scholars, are unsure what it involves, how it happens, and how to prevent it. This lecture addresses these questions to help researchers develop ethical, responsible writing practices. Before we begin today's topic, let us briefly recall what we discussed in the previous episode of this series. In episode 1, we focused on fundamental principles of research ethics and why ethical conduct is essential in academic research. We discussed academic integrity, researchers' responsibilities, and ethical practices that protect scholarly credibility. Ethical research covers not only how studies are conducted, but also how findings are written, shared, and published. A key concern in academic writing is plagiarism, using others' ideas or words without proper credit. Since research builds on existing knowledge, scholars must cite and acknowledge prior work. Today's session focuses on understanding plagiarism and how to avoid it in manuscripts, theses, and articles. Before we move further into today's discussion, it is helpful to briefly outline the objectives of this session. By the end of this lecture, you should have a clearer understanding of several important aspects related to plagiarism in academic research. First, we will discuss what plagiarism actually means in context of scholarly writing. Second, we will examine the different types of plagiarism that may appear in research manuscripts, theses, and academic publications. Third, we'll clarify the difference between similarity and plagiarism, which is one of the most commonly misunderstood concepts in research writing. We will also briefly explore how plagiarism detection softwares work, since these tools are widely used by universities and academic journals. Finally, we will discuss practical strategies that researchers can adopt to avoid plagiarism and maintain integrity in their writing. Let us begin with a fundamental question. What exactly is plagiarism? In academic research, plagiarism refers to presenting someone else's work, ideas, or words as your own without proper acknowledgement. In other words, when a researcher uses intellectual content created by another author and does not clearly indicate the original source, that practice is considered plagiarism. It is important to understand that plagiarism is not limited only to copying sentences or paragraphs. In research writing, plagiarism may involve several different types of content. For example, it may include copying text from another article or book, using ideas or theoretical concepts developed by another scholar, reproducing data or research finding, or even using images, tables, or figures without proper citation. Because academic research builds upon existing knowledge, it is perfectly acceptable to refer to previous studies. However, whenever the work of other scholar is used, proper acknowledgement through citation is essential. In academic environments, plagiarism is considered a serious form of research misconduct. Universities, research institutions, and academic journals have established strict policies to address plagiarism because it undermines the credibility of scholarly communication. When plagiarism is detected, several consequences may follow. For instance, a manuscript submitted to a journal may be rejected during the editorial screening process if significant plagiarism is identified. In more serious situations, if plagiarism is discovered after an article has already been published, the journal may issue a formal retraction of the publication. Such incidents can significantly damage a researcher's academic reputation and professional credibility. In addition, many institutions treat plagiarism as an ethical violation, which may result in disciplinary action or academic penalties. Therefore, understanding how plagiarism occurs and learning how to avoid it is an essential responsibility for every researcher. It is important to recognize that avoiding plagiarism is not just about following institutional rules or technical guidelines, it reflects researchers' ethical responsibility. Academic research relies on trust, honesty, and intellectual respect. Properly acknowledging others' work shows respect for intellectual property and scholarly contributions. Clearly citing sources of ideas, data, and arguments allow readers to trace knowledge, development, and verify evidence. Responsible scholarship requires both originality and transparency in crediting prior research. Plagiarism can occur in several different forms, and understanding these forms is essential for researchers who wish to maintain ethical writing practices. Some of the most commonly discussed types of plagiarism include direct plagiarism, mosaic plagiarism, self plagiarism, and accidental plagiarism. Each of these forms involve the inappropriate use of another person's intellectual work, but they occur in slightly different ways. Direct plagiarism is usually the most obvious form and involves copying text word to word without citation. Mosaic plagiarism involves modifying parts of the original text while maintaining the structure of the ideas. Self plagiarism occurs when authors reuse their own previously published work without proper acknowledgement. And finally, accidental plagiarism may occur when citations are missing or paraphrasing is not done correctly. In the next few slides, we'll briefly examine each of these types in more detail. Direct plagiarism is perhaps the most straightforward and easily recognizable form of plagiarism. It occurs when an author copies text word to word from another source without providing proper citation. For example, a researcher might locate a paragraph in a previously published journal article and insert that paragraph directly into their own manuscript without quotation marks or reference to the original author. Even if only a few sentences are copied in this way, the act is still considered direct plagiarism. In academic writing, originality is expected not only in research findings but also in presentation and interpretation of ideas. When text is copied directly without acknowledgement, it creates the false impression that the writing and the intellectual contribution belong to the new author. For this reason, direct plagiarism is often treated as one of the most serious forms of academic misconduct. Another form of plagiarism that is sometimes less obvious is known as mosaic plagiarism, which is also referred to as patch writing. In this situation, the writer does not copy the original text exactly word for word. Instead, certain words may be replaced with synonyms or small modifications may be made. However, the overall sentence structure, sequence of ideas, and intellectual framework remain very similar to the original source. Because the core ideas and organization of the text are still derived from the original author, the work cannot truly be considered original writing. Even though the wording may appear slightly different, the intellectual contribution has not been properly acknowledged. Therefore, mosaic plagiarism is also considered a violation of academic writing standards. Researchers should therefore focus not only on changing words but on fully understanding the idea and expressing them in their own analytical language while providing appropriate citation. Another form of plagiarism that is often misunderstood is self plagiarism. Self plagiarism occurs when authors reuse their own previously published work without proper citation or acknowledgement. Some researchers assume that if they originally wrote the text themselves, they are free to reuse it without restriction. However, in academic publishing, this is not always acceptable. When research is published, it becomes part of scholarly record. Reusing large portion of that material without disclosure may create the impression that the content is new and original when in fact it has already appeared elsewhere. For example, self plagiarism may occur when an author publishes the same article in multiple journals or when large sections of previously written theses are reused in a journal article without proper citation. Similarly, republishing figures, tables, or data from earlier work without acknowledgement can also fall under self plagiarism. Therefore, even when using one's own previous work, it is important to maintain transparency and proper referencing. Not all plagiarism occurs intentionally. In many situations, researchers may commit accidental plagiarism, often without realizing it. This usually happens when proper writing and citation practices are not followed carefully. For example, accidental plagiarism may occur due to poor paraphrasing, where a researcher changes only a few words from the original source but keeps the same structure of ideas. It may also happen when citations are accidentally omitted, when references are incomplete, or when the original source of an idea is forgotten during the writing process. These situations are especially common when researchers review a large number of literature and later struggle to remember where a particular idea originated. Even though such cases may not involve deliberate misconduct, they can still create serious academic concerns if detected during manuscript review. For this reason, maintaining organized notes and careful citation habits is extremely important in research writing. At this point, it is important to clarify a concept that often creates confusion among researchers: the idea of similarity in plagiarism reports. Similarity refers to text overlap that is detected by plagiarism detection software. When a manuscript is uploaded into these systems, the software compares the text with very large databases that contain academic publications, books, conference papers, and online documents. The software then highlights sections of the text that match previously published content. This comparison produces what is known as similarity report, which usually includes a similarity percentage and links to the original sources. However, it is important to understand that similarity simply indicates textual overlap. It does not automatically mean that plagiarism has occurred. Therefore, similarity reports must always be interpreted carefully and within the context of academic writing practices. A common misconception among researchers is that any level of similarity automatically indicates plagiarism. In reality, this is not always the case. Similarity can appear in academic manuscripts for several legitimate reasons. For example, certain technical phrases or terminologies are commonly used within specific research field and may naturally appear similar across different publications. Similarity may also occur in methodology descriptions, where researchers describe standard procedures or experimental techniques. In addition, proper cited quotation or referenced material may appear as matched text in similarity reports. Even reference lists and bibliographies can sometimes contribute to the similarity percentage. For these reasons, similarity percentages must be interpreted carefully. Editors and reviewers always examine the context of the matching text rather than relying only on numerical values. One important insight for researchers is that similarity percentage alone cannot determine whether plagiarism has occurred. For instance, a manuscript may show low similarity but still contains plagiarism if ideas, theories, or arguments from another source have been used without proper acknowledgement. At the same time, a manuscript may display a higher similarity percentage but still be acceptable if the overlapping text comes from properly cited quotations, methodology descriptions, or standard terminology. Because of this, editors and reviewers do not evaluate manuscripts solely based on the similarity score generated by software. Instead, they carefully analyze the nature of the matching text and quality of the citation. Understanding this distinction helps researchers interpret plagiarism reports more accurately and avoid unnecessary concern about similarity percentages. To assist with identifying potential plagiarism, many universities and academic journals use plagiarism detection softwares. Two of the most widely used systems are Turnitin and Authenticate. These tools are commonly used by universities, research institutions, and scholarly publishers as part of the manuscript screening process. When a research paper is submitted to journal, it is often checked using one of these systems before it proceeds to peer review. Similarly, many universities require students to submit theses and dissertation through plagiarism detection platform to ensure originality. These tools provide editors and institutions with a preliminary assessment of textual overlap with existing literature. However, it is important to remember that these systems are analytical tools, not decision making authorities. The final interpretation of any similarity report is always performed by human reviewer or editors. Let us briefly understand how plagiarism detection software works in practice. The process typically follows a few simple steps. First, the manuscript or the document is uploaded into the software system. Next, the software scans the entire text and compares it against a very large collection of documents stored in its database. These databases often include journal articles, books, conference proceedings, web content, and previously submitted academic papers. After completing the comparison process, the system identifies matching text segments between the submitted manuscripts and existing sources. These matching sections are then highlighted in a similarity report, which allows editors or instructors to examine the overlap in detail. The software therefore acts as a screening tool, helping reviewers identify areas that may require closer examination. After a manuscript is analyzed by plagiarism detection software, the system generates what is known as similarity report. This report provides several types of information that help editors or reviewers examine the originality of a document. First, the report typically shows an overall similarity percentage, which indicates how much of the text overlaps with existing sources in the database. Second, the report highlights specific sections of the manuscripts where matching text has been detected. These highlighted portions allow reviewers to identify exactly which sentences or phrases resemble previously published material. In many cases, the report also provides links to original sources, enabling editors to compare the submitted text with the source of document. However, it is very important to remember that plagiarism detection software does not make ethical judgments. These systems simply identify textual similarities. The final evaluation is always performed by human editors, reviewers, or academic supervisors who interpret the result in context. One of the most effective way to avoid plagiarism is through proper citation of sources. Whenever researchers use ideas, data, or text that originate from another scholar's work, it is essential to acknowledge that source clearly. Citation allows readers to identify where information came from and provides transparency in the research process. For example, when a researcher refers to concept, theories, research findings, or specific statements from another publication, the original author must be cited. Different academic disciplines follow different citation styles. Some of the most commonly used styles include APA, MLA, Chicago, and Vancouver. Although these formats differ slightly in structure, their primary purpose is the same: to ensure that the intellectual contribution of previous researchers are properly recognized and documented. By consistently applying corrected citation practices, researchers can significantly reduce the risk of plagiarism in their work. Another essential skill for avoiding plagiarism is effective paraphrasing. Paraphrasing means expressing an idea from another source in your own words while preserving the original meaning. However, good paraphrasing requires more than simply replacing a few words with synonyms. To paraphrase effectively, a researcher must first fully understand the concept presented in the original source. Then the idea should be rewritten using a different sentence structure and wording, reflecting the researcher's own interpretation of the information. At the same time, the original source must still be properly cited since the idea itself belongs to another author. Many cases of accidental plagiarism occur when writers attempt to paraphrase by making only minor word changes while keeping the same structure of the original text. Therefore, effective paraphrasing involves reframing the idea in a genuinely new way while maintaining proper citation. In some cases, using an author's exact words is necessary. This should be done as a direct quotation. Quotations must appear in quotation marks and include a proper citation to the original source. They are useful when wording is specially clear, significant, or historically important. However, academic writing generally favors paraphrasing and synthesis over frequent quotations. Researchers should reflect the author's own analysis and interpretation, so quotation must be used selectively to support, not replace, the researcher's explanation. Another practical way to avoid plagiarism is keeping well organized notes during the literature review. When reading many sources, it is easy to forget where ideas or statements came from. Researchers should record key details for each source, including the author, title, journal, or publisher, and page numbers. Accurate notes help locate original sources quickly, prevent missed citations, and avoid incorrect attribution. Organized note taking supports clarity and accuracy throughout the research writing process. In addition to manual note taking, researchers can also use reference management software to organize citations more efficiently. Several widely used tools are available for this purpose, including Zotero, Mendeley, and EndNote. These tools allow researchers to collect and store references from books, journal articles, and online databases in a structured digital library. One of the major advantages of these systems is that they can automatically insert citations into manuscripts and generate formatted reference lists. This greatly reduces the chances of citation errors and saves considerable time during the writing process. Reference management tool also helps researchers maintain consistency in citation styles across their documents. As a result, they are widely used by scholars around the world as part of the efficient and ethical research writing practices. Before concluding, let us recap the key points. Plagiarism is not just a technical issue of text similarity, but a matter of academic integrity and ethical responsibility. Responsible research writing requires respecting others' intellectual contributions through proper citation. Developing strong paraphrasing and synthesis skill, and keeping organized notes while using reference management tools to avoid citation errors. Avoiding plagiarism protects research credibility, researchers' reputation, and trustworthiness of academic knowledge. Before we conclude today's lecture, I would like to briefly introduce the topic of our next episode in this series. One of the major challenges faced by researchers today is identifying reliable and credible journals for publication. Many scholars receive invitations from journals promising extremely rapid publication, sometimes within only a few days. However, not all journals operate according to legitimate academic standards. In the next episode, we will explore an important topic titled Predatory Journals versus Peer Reviewed Referred Journals with ISSN. Thank you very much for joining this session of Anna Publishing Research and Ethics series, and I look forward to see you in the next episode.